Tonight on The Best Times, we look back over 7 seasons of the show and take a page from Reader's Digest as we revisit the people who are among our most unforgettable characters. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. Most of you will be familiar with Reader's Digest, the small magazine that contains condensed articles and stories. My parents subscribed to the magazine when I was growing up, and I would often thumb through it. One article that always caught my attention was entitled, "The Most Unforgettable Character I Ever Met." Without fail, this article always told a great story about someone who had impacted the life of the writer. Last season, you met a few of my most unforgettable characters. Well, on tonight's show, we're going to add a few more people to the list. Here are my most unforgettable characters, take 2. I first met Bunny Lee Wilhelm at the regular Friday night meeting of the Memphis Bop Club. She wasn't hard to spot on the dance floor that night. As I found out later, Bunny Lee has been dancing, in one way or another, throughout her life. She started as a go-go dancer at the old Nightlighter Club and has danced her way through a series of occupations ranging from court clerk to burlesque performer. Today, she teaches yoga at various places around town, including the McWhirter Senior Center. As you watch Bunny Lee bend her body into various pretzel shapes, realize that she's in her 80s. She definitely doesn't act her age.
It's been easy for me to laugh this lifetime. You program your life. You make choices with every thought you think and every word you say and every emotion you have. That's how powerful you are.
Here's another guy who doesn't act his age. Dale Sanders is also in his 80s, but he's always looking for the next adventure. In the Navy, he was a hard hat diver, a notoriously dangerous assignment. In the 60s, he was a champion spear fisherman and once held the record for underwater breath holding at just over 6 minutes. In 2015, at age 80, Dale became the oldest person to paddle the entire length of the Mississippi River, from the source in Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico, a distance of over 2,300 miles. After 80 days of paddling, Dale completed his journey. In 2017, he found another record to conquer. Dale is the oldest person at age 82 to through hike the 2,190-mile Appalachian Trail. Now you know why his nickname is the Graybeard Adventurer.
I'm speaking to the generation before me, 50s and 60s. Those people, if they prepare themselves now, like I did, they will be and they can be doing the same things I'm doing now at 80 and 81.
Retirement means different things to different people. Phil and Cheryl Gaston embarked on their retirement adventure by selling their 3,500 square foot home outside of Atlanta and moving into a 350 square foot RV. Their nomadic lifestyle has led them from the Badlands of South Dakota to the top of Pikes Peak in Colorado. When I left them, they were planning to visit the Grand Canyon and then drive up the scenic Pacific coastline on California One. They plan on continuing their retirement adventure for as long as they can.
people wait till they retire to do anything, and then they might not make it to retirement. So I just said, let's do it. Let's sell everything.
It was really a chance to live for us.
Exactly.
I mean, because we were literally living to work.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And it was, we looked at it as a chance to go live.
While Phil and Cheryl are on a permanent road trip, Ralph and Twyla Williams decided to pull up stakes and move to a new home 8,000 miles away in Tanzania. They are following in the footsteps of their missionary parents by becoming Christian missionaries to the drought-afflicted Maasai people. And they go there as teachers, teaching the Maasai how to build water cisterns and biosand water filters from readily available materials, teaching them to read, and showing them how they can establish their own businesses. They hope that their efforts can make a difference in the lives of the Maasai.
If we can establish a group of people who are teaching their neighbors how to read and write and make their life better that way, if we can show people how to create a business and they're making a living and showing somebody else how to make a living, we've really accomplished what we're there for.
I've met a number of people who are devoted to a mission in their lives. Reverend Lisa Anderson is a Disciples of Christ minister who started a program called Room in the Inn. Every winter, from November through March, churches open their doors to the city's homeless. Members of congregations from across the area cook and serve hot meals and provide warm beds for the night. On any given night in the winter, there may be upwards of 2,000 homeless people on our streets. Reverend Anderson taught me a lot about who the homeless really are and why we should open our doors and our hearts to them.
I think there are some people who have given up the idea that there's any other way to be, but I'm not sure that there's anybody I've met that wants to live on the street. There has been some beauty in opening up what we call a sanctuary to people who need sanctuary, and that's such a beautiful concept.
When I met Reverend Jack Conrad, he was making the rounds of cancer patients at Methodist Hospital Germantown. He spent 35 years as a corporate executive in the manufacturing industry, making railroad parts. And then a chain of events led him to a second career as a chaplain. The wisdom he gained from reinventing his life can serve as a lesson to anyone who's arrived at one of life's crossroads.
Every last one of us, looking at our particular status, will think that if we had more, we'd be better off, and that's just not true. Who we are makes a much more difference than what we think we have. It's not security against death. It's not security that life is going to be fair. It just isn't. But if we're secure in who we are, and we can imagine ourselves doing different things, oh Lord, what a great place this would be.
Bob Sauter isn't an ordained minister, but he is as devoted to his ministry as any preacher of the gospel. In 2007, Bob and his wife took their retirement money and bought this small house at the busy corner of Summer and Highland. This is Forgiveness House. In legal terms, it's a residential reentry center, more commonly called a halfway house. 12 men paroled from prison live here for a minimum of 90 days as they try to rebuild their lives. Bob and his staff operate on a shoestring budget to provide guidance and help to men who are often shunned by society.
And while these men cannot probably face, many of them face their victims, again, from a spiritual point of view, the Lord will equalize that situation. They will be able to go back out into the community and help somebody else that's been damaged. And in that restoration will be helpful not only to that person, but also to our guys that are out there, you know, trying to make a difference in somebody else's life.
Diane Height is dedicated to a different group, the men and women who serve this nation in our military. This is a regular meeting of the group she founded, Forever Young. Diane's idea was to grant the wishes of war veterans, specifically the members of the greatest generation that fought in World War II. She's raised money to take veterans on trips to the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., and has brought veterans back to their battlefields, from D-Day on Utah Beach to the Battle of the Bulge in Belgium. And by doing so, she's given closure to 70-year-old wounds.
I like to say, as you throw a stone into a pond and you just see the ripple effect, that's exactly what happens with Forever Young. You'll see it in the healing in the lives of our veterans, and then it just trickles out to the family members and to the community, and it just goes on and on and on.
I've interviewed many war veterans for the show, but Olin Pickens may have the most remarkable story. Olin landed in North Africa in January of 1943 as a raw private. During the Battle of Faid Pass, he was captured by the Germans, force-marched to the coast, and transported by ship, train, and truck to Stalag 3B in Germany. There he worked construction with picks and shovels from sunup to sundown. If you didn't work, you didn't eat. After a year of imprisonment, Olin and a buddy managed to escape. They were within hours of connecting with the French underground and crossing to a neutral country when they were recaptured. Their punishment was solitary confinement.
He put each one of us in some little old dungeons made out of concrete. I wasn't in there by myself. Jesus is in there with me. Because every once in a while I'd think about, well, I'm just going to give up and die. It's just easy to die. It was hard to live. I mean, it took effort to keep living, but it was, if you just sit down, you just die real easy. So when I'd think about that, I'd hear this voice, "What did you tell your mother and daddy when you left home?" I thought, well, I told them that I'd be back when the war is over. And so when I thought that in my mind, it just gave me new strength. I didn't think about giving up and dying anymore. So actually my faith brought me home.
Olin Pickens was liberated in April of 1945. When he was captured, he weighed 195 pounds. When he was liberated, he weighed just 120 pounds. If you're a history buff, you've got to attend one of Jimmy Ogle's walking history tours in downtown Memphis. He makes history come alive in the places where it actually happened.
From the early Native Americans and European explorers to the 20th century entrepreneurs we've had here, from Civil War to civil rights, music to medicine, the whole deal. We tell it better than anybody.
Jimmy is the official historian of Shelby County, despite the fact that he doesn't have a PhD in history. Instead, he says he's learned Memphis history through osmosis, absorbing the knowledge through his experiences. Here are a few fast facts about the history of Memphis, courtesy of Jimmy Ogle.
We call it the Bluff City for several reasons. One, the co-founders never lived here. They all lived in the Nashville area. This was a pure business venture for them. And Shelby, who wasn't a Memphian, who wasn't a Tennessean, he was the governor of Kentucky. We named our county because of his efforts there. All of West Tennessee for the first 22 years we were a state wasn't even known by the state of Tennessee. It's owned by the Chickasaw Nation. We bought it for 4.5 cents an acre. Our streets are animal paths. Poplar's an old animal path because of the high ridge that they walked. Then the Native Americans walked it, then the European explorers walked it, then American settlers, then the wagon trains, and we paid poplar. I'm 62 years old. I mean, I have the energy of a 16-year-old most of the time and the curiosity of a 6-year-old. And I've learned a lot from mistakes, but I've had a lot of great experiences here. I'm the luckiest Memphian there is. Whoever here drains 41% of
While Jimmy Ogle tells the story of Memphis history, Miriam DaCosta Willis helped write one of its chapters. She was a professor at 6 different colleges, including Memphis State University. As a leader of the civil rights movement in Memphis, she helped organize boycotts, sit-ins, and protests. When she was 8 years old, she attended Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, where she first met Reverend Martin Luther King. It was on a bus going to church that she first experienced the harsh reality of racism in the South. It was a moment that changed her life.
We were going to Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. I was going with a couple of my friends. And I got on the bus and I just plunked down in the front seat. And they told me, come on to the back, come on to the back. And I said, no, what? I'm gonna sit up here. And they said, no, you can't sit up there. Colored people can't sit up there. So I just reluctantly went to the back. And then I got home, and really this was the first time that I was hit with segregation. And my mother explained to me that black people were supposed to sit in the back, and white people were supposed to sit in the front. And I thought that was crazy.
I've met a few of my most unforgettable characters at WKNO. Chuck Scruggs spent his life behind a microphone. His radio career took him from Cincinnati to San Francisco before becoming the general manager at WDIA in Memphis. When he left radio broadcasting, he began to volunteer at WKNO. So when the station was looking for someone to be the face and voice of their new children's programming, they didn't have to look very far. Chuck Scruggs became Mr. Chuck and began an encore career preparing preschoolers and their parents to enter school ready to learn.
But I've seen too many lives that are hanging in the balance, hanging this, if you care enough, you don't have to care too deeply. If you're sensitive enough, you have to be moved by that in some way. So I'm just doing what I can.
Chuck Scruggs is no longer with us, but his legacy lives on in the hearts and minds of the children he impacted. I've done more pledge breaks with Jim Eichner at my side than I can count. He was synonymous with WKNO. A few years ago, I did a story about his creative side. When he wasn't acting in theatrical productions around town, Jim was painting. He studied watercolor with Fred Rawlinson, and painting made Jim see the world around him in a different way.
I have a little mantra that I repeat most mornings that is an acronym, GLAD. To wake up grateful, to find some way that day to love, to show love, to treat life like an adventure, the GLAD, and the fourth is the most difficult for me, and that's discipline. You do all this, but you gotta have some discipline with it. And this motivates me and keeps me going, and it's exciting to say there is no acceptable alternative to viewing this day as an adventure.
Unfortunately, Jim passed away not too long ago, but his legacy at this station lives on. One of the most unforgettable things about Memphis is its music. In 1963, Deanie Parker recorded a song she wrote called My Imaginary Guy, which became a regional hit. She went on to become Stax Records' first head of publicity and artist relations. The Memphis sound came out of this studio, and Deanie was there for its rise and fall. But from the ashes of Stax Records has risen Soulsville, USA, and Deanie was one of its creators and its CEO until her retirement. For her, the music lives on.
I will feel that I have left my legacy when out of the Stax Music Academy, the next greatest artist is discovered and launched, so that the world will once again look at Memphis and Soulsville, USA, and the corner of College and McLemore and say, yeah, they still got it going on.
When he was just a teenager, Larry Raspberry was a rock star. His band, the Gentrys, had a hit record entitled Keep On Dancing. The group broke up after they couldn't duplicate the success of the first hit, but Larry kept making music. If you frequented Overton Square at all in the 70s and 80s, then you probably rocked the night away to the high-energy music of Larry Raspberry and the High Steppers. Today, Larry lives in LA, but he makes regular trips back to his hometown, where his music is still a part of the soundtrack of Memphis. Even in his 8th decade of life, Larry Raspberry is still rocking on. Yeah, you're the man who wrote "Rock and Roll Will Make You Rant and Rave."
It'll send you
to an early grave.
Yes, yes. I don't think I could have. I don't think I thought I'd be doing this. Well, here we go back to your question of the rock star. If you're going to be a rock star and you think you're going to be at 17 or 18, you won't need to go do that at 68. You'll be on your boat like Johnny Carson, you know, traveling the Riviera. So we all got tangled in there somewhere, is what I thought. I didn't think very much about the then. I thought mostly about the now. I was young.
I have a feeling that, like that song, you're going to be keeping on dancing for as long as you can.
And prancing, Chris. Keep on dancing and prancing.
Right. Like Larry Raspberry, John Kilzer was a rock star in his youth. His hit song, Red Blue Jeans, got plenty of play on MTV, and John toured throughout the country. Today, John plays music in a very different venue, the Sanctuary at St. John's United Methodist Church, and he has become Reverend John Kilzer. Years of bouts with alcohol and drugs eventually led him to Christ. Having experienced the heights of success and the depths of despair, John has some words of wisdom for all of us.
You kind of move from the love of wisdom to the wisdom of love, I think, and you kind of taking that really, even though it's just from here to here, this is a very, very long journey from your head to your heart, and you experience a sort of cardiognosis, I think, the older that you get, and you're not thinking so much, and you're actually, you're thinking with your heart. Does that make sense?
Everyone likes a good love story. Well, this one proves that romance is ageless. Joy Jamison and Sam Nichols were high school sweethearts, but World War II took Sam halfway across the world, and they lost contact with one another. For nearly 60 years, they led separate lives. Each thought the other had died, and that would have been the end of their story, except for Sam's sister Millie and email.
About a month later, the phone rang early in the morning, and this female voice said, "Joy, this is a voice from the past." I said, "Oh, who is this?" And she said, "This is Millie Gustafson. I'm Sam's Nichols' little sister." And I said, "Oh, what happened to Sam?" And she said, "Oh, he's living out in Arizona." And I just about flipped. I couldn't believe it. We began emailing each other. And that, to me, is the beauty of our story, because we could go into depths, not only just to find out what had happened in the last 50 years, but we exchanged ideas and our philosophy of life and what was important to us. And that, to me, is what made our love such a deep one, because it was a few months later that he finally came to see me. When we saw each other, it was, I don't know, the old magic was just still there. Nothing had ever changed, really, even though it was a long time after.
In 2001, after a lifetime apart, Joy and Sam were married. Last but not least on my list of unforgettable characters is Lester Gingold. After 2 careers, Lester was on his way to retirement when, at age 72, he became the editor and publisher of the Best Times newspaper. For the next 20 years, Lester threw himself into learning everything he could about gerontology. He wrote editorials about aging issues and attended national aging conferences. This show was his brainchild. In his encore career, as he called it, Lester was determined to make a difference. Today, at age 95, he is finally retired. Almost. After a lifetime of stories and a legacy of helping others, Lester has a philosophy of life that serves as wisdom for us all.
You're never too old to learn. You're never too old to love. You're never too old to pray. I do more of these every day. That's it.
Want more information about life after 50? Go online to watch more shows and find more resources. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.